I don't know, shout out a question, which not formal. Where do we start? James, can you give us a bit more before we came into this position? Aaron's coach, talking about that and Olympics in terms of COVID and training, and yeah, you guys had an extra year to prepare or make you more unprepared. No, okay. Up to you.
Okay. Hi everybody, my name is James Barnes. I'm originally from Richards Bay. It's not Durban, it's a little bit further down the coast, or up the coast. So basically I've been climbing for 15 years. I started climbing at school, fortunately enough, at Durban High School. It was a sport offered back when I was there from 2005 through to 2009. The interesting thing that I find that I always like to tell people is that when we were competing at school, we would have a provincial comp, which was based inside an artificial venue, but then our national events were out on rock. And it was more about growing rock climbing. So there were areas that had a couple friends going. On the score sheet. That's how you. So now to see how the sport has grown in the last, I don't know, 5 years, it's been insane. In 2010, South Africa sent their first youth team to Innsbruck, not Innsbruck, Imst, in Austria. And that was the first time South Africa actually sent a national team into an international setting. And that's where the ball started rolling for international competition climbing, I feel. And it's only grown more and more and more. The amount of gyms that have popped up in the last 10 years, Wesley, your guys' gym has only been up, what, 7 months?
Yeah.
So you're adding to the feed, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's so insane. Let me just jump all the way through to when the Olympics was put in through. In 2016, the Olympic Committee announced that climbing was going to debut in 2020. And it was not only like the first step in getting speed climbing happening in South Africa, but it was also a way of trying to reach out to other setters and getting them to come into South Africa and teach us a bit what they knew, talking to a lot of international coaches and how they train specific athletes and how to prepare them for what they were up against. And I started my coaching career at the Barn in 2015, and then I moved to City Rock, Johannesburg, and that's when I started coaching Chris. Chris, Alistair, Josh Greaves, Nicholas Meinl, and Damien was at the Barn, but he was still part of the team that went over to China in 2016. So it was really cool to start with them quite young. And my biggest thing was never about putting them under an intense regime and just making them train to their maximum, which they did anyway. But it was more about exposing them to rock climbing and understanding why I personally love the sport. And how I always found camaraderie in the people that I associated myself with, which was generally climbers and surfers. And it was more about just getting out into the elements and just actually experiencing the sport for what it is. And the kids gripped on, and look at them. We've got two Alistair and Josh Greaves here competing today. We had Chris in Japan. It's just it's been a wild run.
Can I jump into the question?
Yeah, please.
Cool. How is the coaching selection process? Because all of their selection process is kind of widely known.
So that is a bit of a grey area for myself. It was more of an application that I had to put in through, and then I don't truly know how the coach was selected. I had to get a bunch of letters from the athletes and the parents to actually put forward my name as a letter of recommendation.
Did you do that or did someone else do that?
No, I asked.
Okay.
Yeah, I asked for the letters and then handed the letters in with my application. Yeah.
How many other coaches apply?
I don't know. I think there was a total of six or seven. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Like, I was out in the Cedarburg when this all happened. Sadel's wedding was it was a wedding.
Application in, weight climbing.
Yeah. But yeah, so when I was appointed, I obviously had to go through a lot more certifications for what SASCOC wanted. So it's like dealing with the Guardian, which is more about safeguarding and having healthy coaching. So there's a lot of things that I would have done in the past that I wouldn't have seen as being wrong. Taking guys outside and climbing, where I was told that it's actually not ideal if I'm the only adults taking a group of youngsters out. They always want a second person there to know that something dodgy isn't happening. And yeah, you laugh, but it's true. And I don't know if you guys have all seen that one documentary about the gymnasts coach in the States. And that kind of thing does happen. So instead of it being like you're wrong, it's more like you just got to kind of protect yourself and that kind of thing. So there was a lot of things that were new for me. And then also managing all the flights and getting all that kind of information ready. Chris was in the States, so there was a time zone difference. That whole setup was actually quite exhausting, and making sure that I was on point with everything and not... My biggest fear was that I was going to ruin it for them. Like, if I missed something and Chris couldn't get in because of some stupid piece of paper that I hadn't signed or something like that. That was like my biggest fear, to be honest. The coaching on the side was not too bad, because that's actually what I enjoy doing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You got a question?
People at home, I see there are 6 of you watching. Hi. I'm watching the comments. If you have something to say, I'll see it. Yeah. Sorry.
That's cool.
Have you changed the way that you do things now having gone through these regulations and they told you must change, but it's not wrong or whatever? Have you changed the way that you do things now as a result of that?
I definitely approach it differently, yes. When we were in lockdown, I used to manage Southern Rock, and I had access to the facility. And at the time, we couldn't let Erin fall away from what her goal was. So I was the only guy in the gym with Erin, and instead of that being after doing the course, I then asked Jordan to come in and be in the gym all the time, and just so that there was a second person in. So it definitely opened up my mind, and how like simple things can be seen as dodgy things if there's no one else there to back you. So I just had to cover my own footsteps. Yeah.
Guys arrive in Tokyo. How many days before you arrive? What is the process in getting in? How many days of warm-up practice?
Okay, so
Jet lag.
okay, so before we arrived, you guys all know about the looting that happened. That happened a week before we had to leave. And that was intense because we still had to make sure that we weren't socializing with other friends and family. We were pretty much locked in our homes because it was pretty strict with access to it. If we had a positive test, that was our game's done. And for a manager, if my game was done, that means that Erin and Chris couldn't have gone through. So it was quite intense. It was like making sure that we had to literally hit every little nail on the head. Before we left, we had to do 2 tests before. If you guys have all flown international, it's probably the same for you guys. There was a 92-hour and then a 36-hour. No, 42. And those 2 tests were probably the most nerve-wracking, because even though we tested negative, we were still nervous that when we arrived in Japan, we tested positive. So we were actually meant to come up and train here in Johannesburg for that week. And we also had to change our minds because the numbers were skyrocketing in this side of the world. So COVID things aside, we then fly to Doha, then Doha to Tokyo. Once we get to Tokyo, the Olympic Committee had already said, Olympic athletes stay on the plane, everybody else get out. Then we had to go through a series of hoops where we had to download this one app where they can monitor and we can upload our COVID tests and all that kind of stuff, and then have the credentials that were given to us, obviously because we didn't have visas. Then they had to go through a whole testing thing, then put into isolation. It was quite funny when we were just about to leave the airport, we had to put our bags outside, and us coming from South Africa, and then they're like, no, you have to go back inside. We're like, really? And they're like, yeah, you guys need to go isolated so we can wait for your test results to come back. And then we had to go sit in an isolation chamber. And it was just Aaron and I because Chris was arriving from the States, so he had to go through this on his own accord. Got the clear, got on the bus. The bus was like an hour from the airport, arrived at the Olympic Village. It was probably like 11:30 p.m. their time. We're all wide awake now and have to go to bed. But so what we did was we ended up just like doing a lap, like going to get food, seeing the venues, seeing what the block was like. And just to see the camaraderie from the other nations was actually pretty insane. Like going to a village, everybody is supposed to be there at one time to all like experience it together. But the big thing with COVID is they restricted that by maintaining numbers inside of the venue. So they staggered the flights. So we had to arrive, then we had 3 days of isolation, but we were allowed to train in those days of isolation. Then we had 2 days of competition, the qualifiers, and then we had 2 days of finals. And after qualifying, we were supposed to leave 48 hours after our games. We weren't allowed to go and see anyone else's games. We weren't allowed to go see anywhere else in Japan or Tokyo. We were only allowed in the village, in the buses, in the venues, and that was our time there. So from the whole thing of like going to the Olympics where the whole of South Africa walks around the ring and does the opening ceremony, we missed that. And then watching individual games and meeting people in other sports and trying to like, I don't know, meet and greets and that kind of thing, that wasn't allowed. And the final thing was we didn't get to go to the closing ceremony. But we got to watch the Olympic climbing final, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Was there a question over here? Not from me.
No.
Anyone got a question?
Anyone?
I just want to know, in terms of being a coach, what it's like dealing with the mental health of your athletes. How difficult is that?
So that is something that's obviously, especially now with COVID, the mental health has been a big aspect. I'll say this honestly, I was traumatized after the looting that happened in Durban. And I know that Erin was based on top of New Germany, which looks down into Pinetown. There were literally people in her like area all the time. And how she dealt with that and still competed, I'm so impressed. She did have a sports psychologist that she was chatting to. There's only so much I as a coach can deal with, and being a friend and being a fellow climber. I didn't take that all on myself. And I personally felt that my own stress of making sure that they were on time, they were fit, they were able, and they were like okay, that was really like tough on me. And to see how Chris and Erin performed at the games with all that is phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah?
Do you still feel it's important to take your climbers out on real rock as part of your coach?
Yeah. So competition climbing it's like your rugby games. So like you have your matches, but you still go and play a copper stump with your friends and touch rugby on the side. And you need to have that little bit of enjoyment and the sense of travel, the sense of being outside where you're not around your similar friends. And I personally believe that if you go and climb a rock more than you climb inside, your climbing inside will grow and become a lot better. You'll also understand a bigger and deeper meaning for our sports. And I personally do mean that.
I rocked up to the boneyard to go climbing with James, Aaron, and Adam. And James and them take climbing outside a bit more training orientated sometimes, which is a cool approach.
Before you finish, we don't have a lead facility in Durban.
Fair. Yeah, no, fair. And this is a compliment. But I remember rocking up a bit late with Adam, because I'm with Adam, if you guys know Adam. And James and Aaron are there just running laps with a weight vest on outside. And I was just like, sure, I never worn a weight vest inside, never mind outside. But it's cool what you guys do without your facility.
Yeah, I'll kind of make do what we have. So there's like two distinct differences in styles in like the lower Durban area. We have the Shongweni area, which is quite open hand and quite slopey and quite steep. When you have Mgeni, which is more like your bourbon climbing vertical on edges. So we would always get schooled at Mgeni. And Roger Natch's thing was like, thugs need jugs, dads need slabs. So we would always just say we would go to school at Mgeni and we would go to the gym when we would go to the wave cave. And that way we would get like a good complement of both techniques and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So utilize the cracks.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions before I go on? Bubs?
You've obviously, James, traveled and spoken to other coaches, and now that the climbing is in the Olympics and it's going to be for the next couple of years, and it's becoming a much bigger thing, competition climbing now. What do you think, in your opinion, is it that we fundamentally need to really become like potential for Olympics, like a really good?
So there are three things that I believe that need to change in South Africa. First thing is funding, and that's funding in all sports. Like, we don't have enough funding in South Africa for our athletes at the high performance area. When I look at Australia, Canada, and America, they're paying their athletes good money to go and outsource what they need. The second thing is that we've got the facilities, we just don't have the holds and the route setters. And we may think that we have the route setters, but we don't. The thing is, like, we as South African athletes, we only compete internationally potentially once a year, and that's at youth nationals, internationals, youth champs. And if we've got a person who can afford to go and compete in a world circuit. And there are people that can, and they work their butts off to get that funding, and they eventually go, but then they do one circuit, and they average out, and they kind of see where they can be, but then it comes back to South Africa, and then they're not with that same exposure, and they can't push that same level that they have, and then they kind of fall back into the level of South Africa. And the last thing I would say is just that the exchange programs in South Africa are obsolete. There's like nothing that's here. And I think that's something that Sankef or MCSA or maybe myself need to work out. How do we get 3 people from Europe here and 3 people from South Africa there? And just expose them to different terrains. They can bring their experience to us. They can teach us what they know. And then the people that go over, they will learn enough and maybe even pick up jobs or like little bits of understanding, and they can bring that back to us and then exchange it over. And that's basically what I think can happen.
What does that funding look like? Are you talking like governmental funding, institutional funding, sponsorships?
Yes. Whatever
Any
we can
funding,
get.
whatever.
Funding is funding.
Yeah.
Obviously, SASCOC can only pay out so much, and that's once every 4 years. Sankef can only pay out if they host so many comps, and I do understand that. It's
Did you guys pay for yourselves to go to
no,
Japan?
SASCOC paid for everything. They even gave us an allowance while we were there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh.
Nicole.
Nicole?
How was it meeting and climbing with some of the biggest names in climbing international?
Sure. Okay. So I had such a fanboy moment when I stepped onto the bus for the first time, and we're going to training for the first day. I had a yoga mat, Aaron's yoga mat underneath my arm, and they were like, okay, this is a sport climbing bus. I get on and I see, like, first up I see Andra, and then I see the Malwem brothers, and then I see Jakob Schuber, and I'm just like, oh my God. Be cool, bro, be cool. And then I like turned, and as I turned, I hit Mickey Malwem in the face with the yoga mat, and I just like, nearly fell over. Oh, so bad. It's so bad. And that was not even climbing against him. That was just like, the face of high performance athletes. I did get to speak to quite a lot of them, and as you all know, they're human and they're pretty cool, and they're not so, I don't know, they're not assholes or anything. They're climbers, they kind of help out where you want to, and they're kind of like nice about it.
They commented a lot during the commentary of the Olympics that how all the climbers are looking at the routes and helping each other do the beta. And the commentators say a lot, there's like no other sport where people are helping your competitors out, figure out sequences, which is a very cool thing that we don't often think of. But as an outsider, it is a thing.
Yeah, that's very true.
Any other questions, guys? No?
Like, speaking of high performance athletes, so in other sports, a lot of athletes would go to a high performance center and they could get quantifiable data to measure their fitness and their performance. And it's only been recently been put into climbing with some of the programs like lattice training and stuff. Do you see that being used more? Do you see it as a useful tool in training?
Definitely. So something that I've started in the beginning of this year, I actually quit my job last year, went on a little sabbatical, and then decided that I wanted to start my own climbing academy. And it's been very underground, just kind of like testing the water, see how things work, how things don't. But the way I trained Erin after that was I was actually giving her a training plan and then having an assessment every 5 to 6 weeks. And just getting that data back and seeing her progression and regression where it was happening was just insane to see how she would go from this level to this level in 5 weeks. And then when you change your phase, obviously some things taper down, but then some of them pick up. And then when you change your phase again, then that's when you're using the first 2 phases together, and then you see it climb even more. And that was just like so insane to see. And that's only with Erin. And I've got a few other athletes where I've monitored their progression. And you do see them fluctuate, but if you look at the graph at the bigger scheme, it's all going up, regardless of it going down every now and then. It's still climbing. And I think that data is super important, because without data, it's like, you don't know if you're going to be able to maintain, and then it's more of a psychological thing, like, why am I so strong but why can't I climb? Maybe it's because you're focusing too much on the metrics and not actually focusing on the technical side, or maybe you're focusing too much on the technical side and not enough on the metric side. So I do see it growing in the country, definitely. I'm pretty sure that Alistair and the team here probably work with the same kind of data capture and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are coaches around the country as well that are doing it. It's just not as large scale as Lattice. And I'm pretty sure Lattice started in the back of a garage somewhere as well.
Yeah.
So
Data.
Yeah. What I would love to see on the next Olympics, Paris, is one of those Whoop monitors. The golfers wear them now, and you can see their heart rates when they start putting. Imagine watching someone bouldering or speed or leading, going into that big move. You can see it.
yeah, that was actually cool.
Yeah.
One cool thing about the speed ball at the Olympics, I don't know if you guys saw the extra black
Black
hold.
ones, yeah.
That was to pick up force and to pick up split time.
Yeah.
To tell you how quick it took you to get off the start to that hold, and then from there to the next hold, from there to the next hold, and then to the top. And it's really cool for a specialist to know that I'm super fast here, but why am I slow here?
Yeah.
So really
For
cool
sure.
data capture.
Data.
Yeah.
Guys, we running out of time, so let's keep this quick. We can have a few more questions. I would like to ask James quickly, formats. What do you think of the format? Speed, lead, and boulder, a whole new thing. I thought it was epic. I love that it just knocked the top guys off. I love for the males, everyone that podiumed won one of the categories. It was just very competitive and like upsetting. I enjoyed it. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts for France? Because they are changing it. They're doing lead and boulder together and speed as a separate medal.
So firstly, I understand why they did it. They weren't going to say we're going to choose sport climbing because we think sport climbing is cool. Yeah. There were a lot of people saying like, no, you can't say that, you can't say that, you can't say that. Well, just do all three.
Yeah.
And as a spectator, I don't know if you guys all watched the debut, the first race ever, and Chris ran that thing. Set South African record and like blew everyone's mind. It was so good.
Yeah.
That for me was like so rewarding, just seeing how the speed climbing gripped way more of the people than you would have thought. And actually a lot of people thought that bouldering was boring. They thought that speed and lead were the best things.
For sure.
And bouldering was boring because they're just seeing people fall. And then the next person top, and then the next
Why is
person
that block half colored in?
Yeah, exactly.
Next to the name.
Why have
I
they
don't
got colored
understand.
holes on top of each other? Whatever. As a format, I think it should be considered one of the sports to consider in the future. It's like, why scrap triathlons when we can just run and cycle? We don't need to swim. But I think it makes it it's a different type of sportsman. And it's very specific because you can't take a speed climber and make them a boulder and a lead climber. And perfect example are the people that won speed, Basta and the Polish girl. Yes, they won speed and the Polish girl broke the world record, which is insane.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Basta blew his bicep. But they could have made the podium if potentially they had done a bit better lower down. Yeah. But we don't know that. But to remove that and have bouldering and lead, which is generally what most of the climbers focus on, we're going to see a way more competitive environment from there. And I do think that the guys that are good at bouldering are going to be as good at lead if they just work their phases right. Throwing at speed is like a whole different dynamic. And getting that power to weight to explosive and all that, and then bring it back into coordination and bouldering and then endurance as well, that's a big thing. And to try and train that, it's not easy because you're always messing up with your phases. It's like, I don't know, yeah.
I've recently heard quite a number of people say that speed climbers are not real climbers.
I mean, that's just rude.
I thought so.
That's a whole other
I at
discussion.
least thought so.
Anyone to speak
I'm
on
going to
that?
hold my comments.
Oh, actually, yeah, it's fine.
Like, I don't know, I found that speed climbing definitely helped my climbing personally. It made me a lot more explosive, and it also helped with my hand-eye coordination. So if you're doing competition bouldering, those kind of aspects will definitely help the other.
It also makes climbing so much more palatable to outside people. They all understand from the top, or from the bottom to the top, which one gets there first, you win.
Yeah.
You know? Easy game. It's the same route, and they don't have to first learn what beta is and all that kind of stuff.
It's funny, I've got like quite a big friend group from Richards Bay, and they know nothing about climbing. They just, oh, James, grab that rock, you know, when they watch me compete and that kind of thing. And they were backing Chris the whole time, sending me like screen grabs of him, like watch his score updates and all that. And at the end of it, I showed Chris this, and Chris actually took a video call and just thanked them all. It's like so cool how they could see what climbing was, how I was so passionate about it, and they're like, okay, now we understand. And they only saw the artificial side. They actually didn't even see the real reason why we enjoy it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, any last questions so we can just get the finals rolling?
Any sneaky good parties in the
So I remember not getting to sleep the one night because of the jet lag, and I ended up waking up and going like chilling, watching the sunrise. And when I did a loop, and at the Olympic rings, there's a big open field. People were passed out there, bottles everywhere. The Canadian mascot moose was in the middle of the road. And got the Japanese police like puzzling, like what's going on here? And just walking around, just like, yeah, there were definitely parties happening, that's for sure.
Can I ask one last one? What kind of mental support has been available to Chris and Aaron after the Olympics? Because it is this thing. It's this huge thing in their lives, in your life, in our lives. What kind of mental support is available afterwards?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know if there was options offered to them. I do know that, like I said, Erin did have a sports psychologist that she may have still continued to see. I know Chris just jumped back into the swing of things back in the States. Yeah. Nothing stops that oak. But I'm not too sure, yeah.
Amazing, guys. And done.
Thank you for coming.
What's the time?
Cool, guys. Thanks to James, thanks to Minka for taking that time. Thanks for you guys being here. Guys, for the next, we're running a little late. For the next 10 minutes, the general public can go look at the final problems, can go touch the start hold, see what's going down in the
Chalk out before you
finals.
touch them though.
Yeah. We still want to try to get the finals going at about 6. The gym is super small, guys, so we can't have everybody upstairs as much as we would love that. So please, mainly athletes and families and close friends upstairs. Everyone else, we've got the stream down here, the bars down here. Lacquer. Catch you guys now.
High five.
I think people enjoy that.
And just hold it down.
Yeah.
So what's happening? The two DJs have arrived for 6 o'clock.